Hey y'all, welcome back to Homestead in the City. I'm Zach, and today we're going on a tour of my garden. Strawberry season means fresh sorbet from friends like Danny, who we had over, amongst other neighbors, to our patio last night. And if you're new here, welcome. Homestead in the City, we're a group of friends in the Midlands of South Carolina. We love to grow food, make food, build community, and so welcome to our channel. So I'm on a quarter acre. We're about to see chickens, fruit orchard, a greenhouse, and all that. I like to start my tours up here at the patio. I go uphill to downhill. We're right here first at our patio pond that our dog helped dig out for us. And then we just sealed in with some chicken wire and concrete. And now this is a habitat for frogs and fish and stuff. It also adds some nice white noise ambiance to right beside the patio. And so we love having this right here. Then stepping away from the patio down our brick path, we do have our well pump that feeds the watering system for the whole homestead. It starts off at our patio pond here from one of the outlets, and then another one goes to the fountain pond that we'll see in a second, which feeds another pond and can even be used for stuff like filling up our chicken's water right here, which might need to reset that today. It's looking kind of dirty, and oh boy, it looks like we've already got some eggs today. This is at the back of our yard at the highest point of elevation where our chickens live. Hey ladies, are y'all back here? We'll see them in a second. But this is where they sleep. They like the tree. Don't use the coop that we built for them. So what I've now been doing is we throw food scraps right over in this area. They don't have any right this second. They also can eat from this bin, which I just put a trash can in there, put food in the trash can, put these ports so they can easily get that food. And then the food scraps that they don't eat get raked under here onto this pile. That's also where we put charcoal, like from our fire and stuff. And then when they're sleeping in the tree up there, they'll poop down into this compost pile, and then we just rake up everything on top of it, get it piled up nice, and then they will come up. They heard me raking. Hey Patricia. They will come and tear down this pile again, and then we'll just keep building it up. And then, hey, yeah, you want to be in the video? Yeah, so they'll tear it down, we'll build it up, and then we'll take something like this screen and sift it out and use it elsewhere in the garden. And the chickens get to live in this tunnel, and this is the chicken tunnel that I made out of mostly cherry laurels that are bent over and putting off more growth. And this was originally just done because we do have power lines right above here, and so the utility company, you know, will send in crews to trim the trees under the power lines. We also have a flight path right up here. But yeah, since we're under power lines, you can kind of see it here. Instead of just letting the power company chop down all the trees, we decided to bend them over so that they would put off new growth and create a tunnel. And then we just trim out in here, and that gives them a nice protected area to live. And then we have that compost pile at the top of the hill over there. And then what I'll also do is in this area of the run, about once a week or so, I will just sweep it all downhill onto the second compost pile. And so this compost, eventually, as I'm raking it through, it will go through the fencing and kind of get filtered and come out the other side. So if we just use a little editing magic here, we're now outside of the chicken run. So you can see as I rake it and it comes through, we get this great compost. And so I'll usually keep a pitchfork or a shovel here so that I can get that and use it elsewhere in the orchard or food forest area. So speaking of the food forest, that is what is the next step back from the chicken run that you see back in here. And if I kind of go over here, you can see that. And so this is the area. It is more wild than the more manicured orchard rows that we're going to see in a second. And so we've got a mix of ton of those cherry laurels that are growing over from the chicken run, and then those were here when we moved in. Then a lot of stuff that we've put in, so just kind of go through some of them. We've got a plum here. We haven't got fruit on it yet, but this has been in the ground for 2 years now, just hitting the 2-year mark. And this came from a cutting from our friend Amanda at Doco Farm. And I believe there is another one, yeah, right here from that same original tree. Hasn't grown up quite as good. Then here is one of our 2 hazelnuts that I got recently. Just put that in the ground a couple weeks ago. And then it is opposite of our first hazelnut over here. So hopefully those will get established pretty well. We've got our loquat tree. I mean, this thing is now well taller than me, and if we looked back at old tours when I put it in the ground, you know, it was this big. We've got elderberry. You're going to see a ton of this around the property. And then right behind that elderberry, this is an American persimmon. Still haven't got fruit off of that guy yet. Actually, we haven't got fruit off of most of our trees yet. Everything's still getting established. This is a red mulberry that started somewhere else. When I put it in the ground at the beginning or end of the winter last year, probably about 14 months ago, it was right about this height. And then last year, it grew up to about this big. You can see where I trimmed it back. And then just this spring, it's already put off all this new growth. So we'll probably be cutting that and propagating it out as well. Continuing on, one of our 2 chestnuts appears to have hung on, so hopefully we will eventually be roasting some chestnuts on an open fire. And then this guy has just kind of surprised us. I had it in my orchard a couple years ago. It did not bloom, and I didn't love it there, so, oh yeah, Pluto wants to get some attention. But I just transplanted it recently. I guess last fall, maybe, and then this spring it bloomed. It looks like this guy's done, but it has been blooming really nicely the last couple weeks. Pluto's needy and needs attention sometimes. So that's about it for the edible trees in the food forest. And then we do have our hammock right here at the top so that we can sit and read a book or take a nap right in the middle of the garden. Now, if you're new here and have been wondering about this wagon in the hole in the middle of the yard, that is our soil building mechanism. So we get wood chips delivered from arborists through chip drop all the time. We'll see that in a second, but I pull all those wood chips uphill, put them down here, and you can see where the original very sandy soil was, down about this level. And so our dog, he will dig down. As he digs, it mixes up everything, and then it'll start breaking down, and over time it just grows into better and better soil, and also it gets thrown downhill. And so it's taken a couple years, but our entire fruit orchard is now just covered in these aging wood chips and thriving with some really good soil. And in fact, if I look down the path just a little bit, we should be able to see some mycelium, which is the mushrooms that break down. Let's see if we can tear down any of this. Well, the fact that I can just take this log and peel it away like that with my bare hands, I'm not seeing right now oh, here we go. So these white strands growing on this chip, you can see that is the mycelium, which is the underground body of mushrooms. We'll see mushroom in a second too. That is what is eating up all of the fresh wood chips and breaking them down into that great soil. So the orchard in the middle of the yard has 7 rows. I'll just go through each of them one by one. Row 1, up by the patio and close by Percy's digging area, right on cue. We don't have time right now. Some of the stuff that we're trying to get going died out. But I've got banana here, some Jerusalem artichoke, and more Jerusalem artichoke. But This probably, it gets shade and a lot of wood chips from Percy digging. We're gonna be limited in what can grow here probably. All right, in row 2, this is a fig tree that last year, was probably about this big this time. And now I trimmed it back to right around here at the end of last winter, and it's putting off this new growth. And when I planted it 2 years ago, it just looked like a stick like this. And all I did was took that fig cutting and just shoved it down on the ground like that. And then over winter, it put out new roots and put off a little bit of new growth that next year. And then the next year is when it put out even more growth. Actually, I guess this is the second year that it's putting out even more growth. So elsewhere on row 2, we've got our quarter-acre orange tree that's bouncing back from the winter, and one of our peach trees. We do have 7 peach trees that we're gonna see. And one of our, is this a pear or an apple? We've got, this is one of my apple trees. I kind of get them mixed up sometimes. All right, row 3 is more of that elderberry that we're gonna be seeing everywhere. This one is one of the ones that has flowers that are starting to form. So in a couple weeks, we'll probably be harvesting some of the flowers from around here to make some elderflower teas and stuff like that. And then the rest we'll leave on to continue forming into elderberries. And then this is another one of my peach trees. I think we've got, actually have a little bit of fruit on it this year. I don't know how many of those will survive to maturity. And hey Patio. And more elderberry, and then a Satsuma mandarin here. And my citruses, they're not doing the best here. We do have, like a lot of this shade. I don't know if I need to move them somewhere else, but we'll see how they do this next year. Right, moving on to row 4, we have even more of this elderberry and our biggest peach tree. This is the one that I put in February of 2023. Everything else went in, I think, like January, February of 2024. But this guy, we've been training the branches down to kind of grow horizontally so that we get new growth coming up vertically that will produce fruit. And we are getting a ton of fruit on this one this year. This is our Belle of Georgia. I grew about a dozen of them last year and maybe got to eat 2 of them. This year, we just have way more. Percival. Right now, orchard row 4, this, not 4, 5. We have 4 along the house and then 3 here. So this is number 5. It is the one that's right beside the digging pit. I had some apple trees and I think a plum in here. They all died from where Percy was digging and threw wood chips and basically buried them. And so banana trees are something that they're not a real tree. And so they can take a lot more organic material being built up along their stalk. And so we decided to grow those in here instead. So I love them visually, and they act as kind of a barrier to protect the other trees. In row 6, we've got more elderberry. We've got another, one of our apple trees. And then in the middle, one of the other big fruit trees so far in the orchard is our Methley plum. And so we've got a few guys on this one. And then we've got more elderberry. This is another mulberry, which we had some fruit on this guy, but it fell off. So kind of like the peach tree last year where we got a little bit of baby fruit, but not much. So hopefully that means next year we'll start getting a good bit off of this mulberry tree. And then wrapped around the mulberry tree is this grapevine. And so you can see some baby grapes starting to form. So we got 1 cluster of grapes off of this vine last year. So hopefully we'll be getting more this year. And then of course more of that elderberry too. All right, and finally row 7. I've got a ton of stuff in here. So this was the very first row of all of the orchard rows that we started working on when we moved in. It was originally going to be an in-ground vegetable bed, but I switched that over. So also as a consequence, this row probably has the best fertility and biodiversity. So we've got in this one our apple tree and a pear tree that I'm training in a kind of an espalier method, which means really just pruning it so it's growing in a 2D fashion, just along this plane really. And so what I've done is just use some zip ties to, I think I just used a branch or something to hold them down. And so kind of like that peach we saw earlier, these branches will go horizontal and we'll keep pruning the new growth after it fruits so that the horizontal branches will thicken up, and then these will just produce new fruit each year, and then they'll be trimmed back. And then we'll probably do a second tier as it grows in, maybe a third, so that you see kind of a candelabra type thing. But elsewhere in this garden row, we've got tons of strawberry. We've got yarrow. We've got this shishito, I think, the purple mint. Yeah, so here's more of that strawberry. You can see we've got onions going in it. They're going to seed and flower right now. We've got a ton of this. Where'd it go? I know I have some in here. There's some mountain mint. There is geranium. We've got, of course, more elderberry. Yeah. Oh, and right here I've got some hops. April and I have not had good luck with hops, but Danny has. So we might have to go over to Danny's house and tour his hop wall pretty soon. Comment if you would like to see Danny's hops. Then at the bottom of the orchard area, we've got the greenhouse. Outside of it right now, I have a couple of earth boxes with things in them. These were inside during the winter, but as it has heated up, had to move them out. So we've got everything from bok choy, lettuce, green onion. I've even got some more elderberry growing up from seed, and so we'll transplant those out elsewhere, and that'll help with the biodiversity in the elderberry stock. And then also right out here, this avocado, which was overwintering in there. And then I put in the avocado some basil to grow out for the summer, and then I decided to see how basil would do under kind of a mini greenhouse condition with this glass dome, and just completely free. So we'll check in on that later. Then inside the greenhouse, I usually have a chair right here. Had it at the patio for our friends last night. But I love to just come in here. This is where I'll sit in the morning. Obviously I have my coffee. I will listen to scriptures or a podcast. And then it's especially nice with the fountain going. Sometimes if it's raining, I love sitting in here. We're in a transition state right now because it's South Carolina and we're going into summer, so it's getting really hot. But you do see stuff in here going to seed. We got the bok choy, we got lettuce and onion in here, and then in this guy over here, we actually have peppers that I overwintered in here. So I got them at a plant swap last fall and left them in, and I'm gonna put them out front probably any day now, and hopefully we'll get a good bit off of those. And then these are some rosemary that I've been growing from seed. I've never been good at that before, so that's something new for me. And then this barrel right here. So when I told you that as that compost gets raked downhill in the chicken run over there and comes through the fence, one of the things that I'll do with it is scoop it up and put it in here with some water. And then I have this air pump going in it. And so that makes a compost tea that, if I use this wine glass, you can see it's just a nutrient dense water that I use that to water a lot of stuff in the greenhouse. I'll also take that water, sometimes do a topical fertilization to the orchard or garden beds and stuff. Then of course, right outside the greenhouse, out right at the foot of the orchard, at the end of the food forest area, and at the bottom of the chicken run, tying everything together, is our frog fountain pond. This is that old 1950s garden pond that was completely fallen in, buried under dirt, had trees growing out of it, so we had to basically excavate it, rebuild the pedestal in the middle, and then sealed it back up. And once we did that and put water in it, wasn't too long before the frogs showed up, and then we did add some fish, and it's a great area. We fill it up with that well water, and then of course rainwater comes in, and so it's continually circulating and building up just a good microbiome in there. And as you can see, the plants thrive around it. We have some that grow in pots down in the water. Got some plants like these strawberries just sitting in the pedestal, kind of growing aquaponically. Got some Virginia creeper growing around the edge. I also love to put potted plants right on the edge, and when it's not rainy, they will get a little bit of a misting from the fountain here. So one of my favorite parts of the garden for sure. Oh yeah, here's one of those mushrooms I was talking about earlier. This is a wine cap. We did put the spores in the wood chips 3 years ago, and they are still sprouting where they spread all throughout our gardens. And moving downhill from the greenhouse and everything, we've got our original frog pond, and this was a hole that Percy dug as well. And so we just encouraged him to keep digging, and he did. And then we lined it with the pond liner and put water in there. We have this pump circulating it and have a fish in there as well. And then it gets water through that pipe that comes from uphill in the fountain. It drains into this, and so when it overflows, it's designed to come over into this trench here, and that fertilizes these guys, this banana and these pawpaws. And so these pawpaws, they're growing from where I just buried a whole pawpaw. I think that would have been August or September of 2022, maybe 2023. I think I would have buried it in 2022, that fall. Then they popped up in 2023, put off a little bit of growth, and then put off a little bit more growth last year. So I think that's correct, and I think this will be year 3 of growth for these guys, but we'll see. Hopefully, eventually, that pawpaw will be growing over this path, which is, when you're coming from the front yard, the entrance to our garden. But on these tours, it's the exit from the orchard and moving on to the side yard. And so this is one that we had been working on a while. There wasn't a lot going on, but now it's finally starting to come together. We've got that arch put in. We're gonna get some stuff growing over that. I've got, more herbs down here. We've got basil, cilantro, some thyme. Over here we've got our muscadine that I pruned back this guy over the winter to just this. And so all of this is new growth in the last couple weeks. And then of course more elderberry over here, and my olive tree that I have in here. And I did find some olive trees elsewhere in the neighborhood that are well established. They're probably this tall. So that is encouraging news on that. And then over here, we're doing a little bit more work on our Meyer lemon tree that we're gonna try to get to grow up the side of the house, and then started putting in some lavender and rosemary and thyme to start filling in this area. Then we can go on to the front yard. And right up against our house, we have our memorial garden. And so this is the fig tree that's the focal point of the memorial garden. It's a reference to the scripture that says, and everyone will sit under his own fig tree and vine, and no one will be afraid, for the Lord has spoken. And so we've got the fig tree that's going to grow up and be the focal point, but then under it we have a ton of different bulbs and stuff that are mostly not blooming at this point. They have been blooming the last couple weeks. You can see our spider worts are doing really well right now. They love the cool mornings that we get. We've got a little bit of a bearded iris still hanging on, but that's mostly gotten beaten up already. It's about to get to the point where we're going to be digging up some of these bulbs and transplanting them and stuff. And then next up we have our raised beds. And so if you've been here for a while, you know that for 2 years these guys were just made of pallets, and we weren't really focused too much on growing annual vegetables at that point. It was more so getting everything else hardscaped and soil built. And so what I did with those beds, we filled them with wood chips and some compost, and then the pathways around them we also composted by, one, putting a ton of wood chips down, and two, as we would trim stuff that were in the beds, we just let it fall into the pathway. And so it's more fresh right now, but it did get to the point where it was breaking down really well under here. And so what we did whenever we replaced the wooden beds with these is shoveled what was in those paths around it into those beds to be the fill, and then put some finished compost on top of that, and then mulched that with a bale of hay. And so with all of that, I've gotten some of the best growth of annuals that I've gotten so far. But yeah, this is just our first year doing these beds really intentionally. So I guess I'll go through. I've got some garlic in this one, and this is the first time that I've grown garlic from seed from a seed company, as opposed to just taking grocery store garlic and doing it. And I can tell you they are growing a lot better than that grocery store stuff. So I think I'll be sticking with that method from now on. I do have a ton of sunflowers in all these beds. Also, we've got potatoes that, now these are like grocery store potatoes that we're just starting to grow eyes in our cabinet. So I buried them. And then in the middle of all of those, we've got a tomato plant. And we've even got a little tomato down there. And then in between the two middle beds, I put this trellis. Right now we've got some peas growing up it. And then I also did just put in a tomato on either side so that they can start arching up over this. And hopefully as the peas start fading out, the tomatoes can start taking over. And I've also got some onions in this bed, and I did have some cilantro under here in the shade to see how it would do. So I don't know if it was, too much shade that it wouldn't grow enough, or, just enough to get it shaded well to keep it cool. But over in this one, we've got some different peppers here, and more of that tomato and potato mix, and of course more of those sunflowers. All right, and then moving more towards the street from the raised beds is our hugelkultur wildflower hill. This guy's been kind of evolving over time. It started off because in our second of 16 chip drops so far, we got these big old trees that were included. The guy did warn me. I didn't think they would be as big as they were, but I was unable to move them. So after a lot of prayer and consideration, decided to just lean into the problem and take wood chips from right here, which, by the way, this is our mulch delivery driveway. We built it intentionally so trucks can come in here, dump a load of wood chips, not block off our main driveway. We can let them age down a little bit or move them immediately somewhere else. But anyways, we just piled and piled and piled wood chips on, and we knew it would take a while, but they're eventually breaking down. Even this big old tree, it is being broken down by the elements. And so as those wood chips break down, they start forming better soil. so that plants can grow in them. So what we're doing now is letting the grasses and flowers take over this hill. And so this will be an area that will hopefully attract a lot of pollinators. I'll do things, I think this is like a squash or a pumpkin. I'll eventually like grow those over the hill. This might be covered with pumpkins, wildflowers and stuff. We do hope to eventually do a water feature right here. Maybe have a waterfall coming down into a pond. But yeah, the idea is just kind of make this center area a little bit more natural and bring in wildlife to the middle, especially those pollinators. So if the pollinators are coming into the middle, they're going to be passing all of our other garden plants on the way. And so on the hill, what we have growing, this big tree is a black walnut that volunteered right there. And then this fruit tree is a pear tree, which I got at the grocery store. Got like 3 trees for 20 bucks. This is the only one that lived. So I knew it was a gamble going in, but I'll take it. Then more elderberries. This is actually a great way where you can see kind of how we propagate our elderberries. In the fall when they go dormant, you can just cut down these stalks, and then the nodes where the new branches come out, that is also where new roots will form if they are kept moist and underground or dark. And so all we have to do is chop off the branches, kind of shove them in the ground, and then the next spring new growth will come up. So we've got a couple elderberries around here on the hill. We've got this is, I think, borage and peas, some garlic and other things, but that is a work in progress and continually changing. And along the downhill side of our yard, I've got one more bed that I just had kind of left over and made this arch over it for more tomatoes to grow up. And then I've also got some pepper and basil in this guy. I don't think this will be a permanent installation here. We'll probably end up doing more fruit trees and stuff to kind of create more of a hedge along here. And then over here in this edge, these are some of our newest beds. They're still being formed right now. So like I said, over there, we had to wait for a ton of the wood chips to break down. Over here, we've done more of piling up the wood chips here to start forming the bases of this bed. And then what I did on top of those wood chips, I put down some compost and some garlic bulbs, and then covered that in this hay to mulch it. So some of the garlic did grow up and it's taken on. A lot of this green is just grass seed that was in there that's sprouting up. I don't care too much right now because it's creating biomass. What I'll do, I might let the chickens come up. I might just cut it down or burn it down, but eventually I'll just add more compost and mulch. But we'll probably use these beds for stuff like potatoes, garlic, things that need a little bit more space and that we're not gonna be visiting as often. And then here is kind of like right at the edge. I'll show you on the downhill side, I built this dead hedge, which we did by placing 2 rows of vertical posts. So you can see like there and here. And then in between the rows, we laid down branches and stuff this way. And so that just creates kind of a retaining wall for all those wood chips and protects this camellia tree right here. And that also gives kind of a trellis for some other things to grow along. We've got some peas, we've got some Virginia creeper, and so that will just create kind of a green wall on the downhill side. Now jumping to the other side of the garden right up against the driveway, we have our floodwater management beds, and these are the beds that we dug down from the driveway level to absorb water into here. And then we dug the beds out here and then piled up the dirt and grass and stuff here on all of them to make these berms. And then on each berm we planted a peach tree, and they are starting to put off fruit. This guy is doing okay. Most of them, they don't have as much though. So next year will probably be the bigger peach year for these guys. And then in the beds, what we've done is just started growing things to kind of build that soil and biomass in there, because it was very depleted soil. And so right now it is a lot of sunflowers. So what I'll do is about every time it's going to be rainy, I'll come out here with a bag of sunflower seeds and just start casting them. And so you can see we've got them at all different levels of maturity around here. And so hopefully we'll just have a good succession going on. But you can really see the difference in what sunflowers growing in depleted soil looks like versus in much better conditions over here. These were planted at the same time, but you can see these guys are just doing a lot more work to go into that poor soil, kind of break it up, mine up nutrients, and then eventually, as they're cut down, they will compost down and kind of become some of that new soil. And the roots that are down in the ground, they will compost in the ground and they'll help create new soil. So it'll take some time, but that's all coming along. And with that, it'll also help absorb even more water. And our berry hedge finally has some more berries. We went to the plant sale at the State Farmers Market a few weeks ago, and got 6 blueberry plants. They still had the berries on it. I know best practice is probably take them all off so we can get root development, but you know what? I just wanted to leave them on this year, and so I did. But yeah, so we've got 6 blueberries in here now, and then around them we've got some other berries. Of course, the most prominent right now is our southern dewberry, which is ripening up right now, which I made a video at our old house right before we moved here about propagating these guys, and it's been one of my most popular videos. And I never did a follow-up because we moved here and it was just growing everywhere like a weed, and so I almost I don't know, I lost motivation. Like, why would you propagate something that's growing like a weed? But I guess if you don't have them native in your area, then they're not like that. But so we've got the dewberry, the blueberry. We've also got over here some blackberry and strawberry. We have more elderberry that we're getting going. So berries are starting to take hold in our berry hedge. I'll probably also add some mulberry trees to replace these crepe myrtles we have. Well, maybe not this one. This one's really great, but might put some mulberries in here. But yeah, the berry hedge is finally happening. Oh yeah, this is a coffee plant. This doesn't stay here. This comes from the roastery at my wife's work, so she just brought it home to pot up, but it's not staying with us. And then finally, our newest addition up here right by the street is our community garden. And so these beds are for anybody that's in the neighborhood that's just walking by. They can come by. We put these new pavers in that a neighbor was getting rid of, and put some just different herbs and stuff in this bed. We've got some oregano and basil. We've got a sage there, more basil. We've got a pepper and tomato that are coming in. We've got pineapple sage in the back of both of these, more pepper and tomato, and basil. So this will probably just have a rotating selection of stuff. Also want to kind of add some signage so that people can know, like, drop in, get some, and then come back on a 4th Friday if you're free, for one of our garden chats. That's about it. We'll see y'all in the next video.